Good morning, everyone. Welcome to OETC and Microsoft's M365 webinar series. I'm James Kelly, OETC's marketing coordinator. Today's session will cover the modern calling landscape, how to get started with Microsoft Teams calling, as well as details about licensing users and more. The session will be presented by Andre Mitchell, a Teams technical specialist at Microsoft. The session is also being recorded and will be sent out next week along with the slide deck. There may be time for Q&A at the end, so feel free to ask your questions throughout the webinar. On the next slide, I'll take a quick moment to highlight OETC's renewal team, some of whom are on today's webinar. If you have any licensing questions, you can reach out to help@oetc.org, and someone from the team will be happy to assist you. And with that, I'll hand it off to you, Andre.
All right, thanks. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Andre Mitchell, and I have the privilege of being an education teams technical specialist. I'm based out of San Diego, and I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary here at Microsoft next week, actually. In my previous life, I worked with the system integrator community, focusing on a lot of on-premise systems like Cisco, like Avaya, and I've done some cloud work with Amazon Chime and some of the other providers like WebEx Calling or 8x8. Today, we're going to talk about cutting the cord and costs by leveraging Teams voice, and we have a few objectives to go through today. First, we're going to start talking about the modern calling landscape. I'll share what trends are happening in this space, and then we'll introduce the star of the show, Teams Calling, and show how you can get started with Teams Calling, do more with Teams Calling, and then end with any questions you may have. With that, talking about the modern landscape, our new normal has expedited this journey to the cloud, and it is a culture shift because the tried and true model of voice and handsets that people have really held on to over the years is starting to change. Remote work is a reality, and many companies had to close offices on the fly, and some of those companies haven't even reopened those offices. Any buildings that were on the ledger that cost a lot of money, they choose to move away from them in the commercial and business space. And education is a little different, but you have less people coming into the office, or you have some hybrid arrangement. And it's important to be flexible enough and to be able to still give that same experience because, as the slide says, voices matter. A lot of tone is reflected in when we speak to someone versus what we say in chat or text and even video. But today we're seeing a lot of people are leveraging conferencing systems for those calls rather than the one-to-one. But we're not giving out our cell phone numbers, so we still want that option of being able to have an enterprise way of getting communication to our customers. And from an IT administration standpoint or a governance standpoint, being able to control what happens with messages that come into our system. Do we want a voicemail to leave with our employees, or do we want to maintain that control on our own system? So modern calling includes a unified solution. We want to pick up where we left off when it comes to communication. But mobility now is not just a mobile phone. We're on the go. We work from home. We use many devices. We stop at coffee shops. We go into the office when it's our turn. We hot desk. But we also, with those new functionalities, we expect some of the same tried and true calling features. So new and improved in the cloud space should not mean less features. And over the last year, us and our competitors have done a lot of iteration on the cloud calling and the features that we offer. So what is new? Well, our user experience, for starters, how we integrate calling in the day-to-day without even thinking about it. How many phone numbers do we actually know at this time of day? And now that we have the ability to just click on a name on our phone or an email address, oftentimes we're not learning phone numbers like we used to. We're not handing out business cards like we used to. We're not tethered to a desk. We jump in the car. We expect to stay on that same meeting or that call when we leave from our desk and just do a quick, seamless handoff to our device. And when we do go into the office, we expect that same functionality that we have at home using a soft client. So it's no longer just that phone experience with just a keypad. We're doing instant messaging on these devices. We're doing video calling. We're doing a lot of other functions that we would do. Even when we think about our mobile phone, it's not just a phone that we use to call. We look at all the applications and the integrations that we can do with that device. And we also want to streamline that into our flow of work. So when you have that, you hear that phrase, single pane of glass, that just means from the IT administration standpoint, we want a simplified way of being able to create users, assign users, delete users, and control and help troubleshoot when those times come up. I spoke about unified clients, and in my prior life, I would get frustrated if I had to run multiple versions of the same software from the same company. Maybe the meeting version of that application was better for meetings, but not so good with the chatting function. But maybe the chatting version of that software wasn't as good with the meeting function. And then when you add calling into it or video, what about directory integration? Is that built in? What about recording? Is that built in? All things that can make a simple system become very complex with a lot of moving parts and a lot of places of failure. And maybe we have them, but if you're like me, you're quickly able to see that having one client that you can use that you're used to using in your day-to-day can help with your own efficiency. So to quickly be able to jump in and make a call or actually do all the other collaboration functions makes the Teams client a very powerful story. Some of the features like call recording, transcriptions, live captions are great, but we also want that same experience that we're used to, like call transfers, music on hold, even customizing that music on hold, call park, call pickup, shared line appearances, delegation. These are all things that, the prior systems, made as a feature you expect today. So when we introduce these new calling features, we want to make sure that we keep those legacy calling features as well. Recording a message, and having that right built into our client so we can see it quickly without having to go to another portal or go to another device. Because we know any moment now we can be fully remote again, depending on how our new normal can adjust. And the device is changing. It used to be you expected to pick up a handset to make a phone call, but now we have touch screens. We're all growing up with those touch screens. We have our device that does more than just calling. Maybe it's a chat interface with the option to call. All that. The headset that we buy, the Bluetooth wireless headset we buy. Maybe we don't even need an actual handset at all. We just want a hot desk with our own headset and pair it to a device. Even owning that device can be something that you don't want to do. You want to consume it the way you consume cloud, where you just pay with a monthly model versus having to buy something and then bleed those assets. And I touched on single pane of glass, and I bring this back here because we want our support personnel, which are hard to keep, they're hard to find, and they're hard to train. We want to make them as efficient as possible. So having the tool to do moves, adds, changes within the same portal, to troubleshoot from within the same portal, to get your reporting all from the same dashboard can really help with the experience and make it more efficient with how you roll out your communications platform. Now, Gartner rates us as a leader. This is our third year. With the last 2 years, we've been top on ability to execute. And cloud unified communication calling is trending towards feature parity, faster deployment, lower costs compared to on-premise based systems. On-premise based system back in my previous life, that was a big moneymaker for me when I worked with system integrators. That was a lot of build hours to configure, to customize what that system is. But when you start looking at cloud calling, you have less of that because it is a unified platform. It's already baked into the cloud, and you have less specialties needed to actually get that up and running, to get it integrated with many of the functions. I want to share some numbers that Gartner also is saying. By this year, end of this year, the 15% of organizations are going to be relying on cloud office suites, like your Microsoft Office 365 and any of our competitors that have a full suite, not just a point product. And that's up 2% from 2019. By 2024, they're expecting 75% of enterprise users will not use a desk phone, and that's up 30% from 2020. And by 2023, the number of remote workers is expected to double to over 2/3 of digital workers. And that's going to shift, again, how we consume, how we buy, and how we offer these tools to the people that support our organizations. So we are trending up. Hence, we bring out Teams Calling. And what is Teams Calling? Well, it's simple, it's reliable, it's customizable, it's secure. It's something that's mobile, can be run on many different clients. It's very flexible in being able to use actual hardware devices, whether it's a traditional phone with buttons. And I talked about culture earlier because I've seen in my time that when you give a phone to a user, you have to be careful that the training and all the enablement goes with it. Because if I take someone that's used to having hardware keys for every button, transfer, hold, call, pickup, and I give them just a touchscreen, well, that's a different dexterity, and you have to make sure your end users are ready for that transformation. It's also financially viable. If you look at these examples here, reducing your hardware footprint. I've had customers say, we want to get out of the hardware business. We don't want the data centers. We don't want to have to pay for the power and the environmentals that go with it. We don't want to have to keep upgrading our network capacity from a wired sense. We're moving to a full wireless, open air network. We want it to be unified. We want a single tool. We don't want to bounce around from one tool to another, depending on what we're doing. And we want to provide cost savings. Here you see there's an 80% cost savings some of our customers are reporting in making this jump. But how do these costs get cut is the question. One, saving time from your employees. In many cases with Teams, we can just step you up with licensing to get you to some of these efficiencies. This touches on financial and operating efficiencies with a 3-month payback after go live. It depends on your environment, of course, but these are just some of the things that have been reported through Forrester's economic impact study. But we wouldn't expect you to use Teams Calling if it wasn't a feature-rich solution. And it's evolved. It started with, basic Teams to Teams Calling. And how do we get to the point where we're at now? We're talking about Teams Calling. We're adding the PSTN to the actual conversation, making your device an actual phone that's reachable from outside your organization. It requires devices. Again, we have headsets, we have other accessories, whether it's a speaker in a conference room or a common area phone. But the key thing is touching on is the advanced scenarios where we made a lot of feature iteration with executive admin delegation, with call queues and auto-attendants, which I've seen a lot of people able to use even when they have a true contact center environment. They're able to leverage, and we're continuing to iterate on that to add more functionality in that space to give you features that a contact center would have with some of the reporting, some of the barging, some of the whispering, all the functions that a supervisor agent would need. Attendant console, a gap, but we're iterating towards that to give you that functionality. And we have integration partners that can offer that capability, to have that front end receptionist be able to leverage their own single pane of glass to manage calls. And analog devices, whether paging systems, whether they're alarm systems or elevator rooms, being able to support all that via Teams and our partner portfolio makes it a viable solution. And what is the user experience? Well, if you're already used to Teams, the phone on the left rail, the call button, makes it a Teams calling app. So it's something you don't have to learn. You just stay within that same single pane of glass from the end user, and you can make your calls. Easy to navigate. And from that same interface, you have your phone number that's displayed. You have the dial pad that if you want to make a call that way, you can just dial from your keyboard or click them from your mouse. You can also use shortcuts from on the search bar up at the top by just hitting /call and put the number in. You have access to your contacts and your history, all seamlessly integrated into your directory service. And you can manage your settings, whether you need to manage your voicemail settings, your call forwarding settings, all from the familiar option of just clicking on our 3 dots of fun, as we call it, or sometimes your picture, depending on which operating system you're running. And some basic calling features we offer, of course, place and receive calls, DID numbers, which means numbers that you can assign to a user to be called directly, versus 2-stage dialing, which means you would call in and you would then hit an extension to get to it. We offer the ability to have both options: distinctive ringing, federated calling, and call history, and actually call detail reports and recording, all based is features for our system. Again, I talk about efficiency. Being able to do a consult transfer of a call within the same interface is a powerful story. You're not clicking to another chat interface to make a chat and say, hey, can you take this call? You actually can do it all within the same interface. And as a cloud system, we give you options on how you want to set up Teams calling. And I'm going to go through that quickly on all the different types you can do. There's essentially 3 types of calling when it comes to Microsoft Teams calling. We have our calling plan, we have our direct routing, we also have Operator Connect. Now, just want to clarify a couple things as well. I always like to show this to customers the types of calling. First, Teams to Teams calls are free. And then you add PSTN to it if you want to be able to make inbound, outbound calls outside of your system. The inbound calls are free. Now, when we talk about outbound, now we're talking about a pooled number of minutes that you can share amongst your users. So if you think of the old school cell phone plans, not to date myself, but it's a pooled plan, a family plan without the rollover. So being able to utilize that option. Now, Operator Connect is a third-party calling plan. So let's say you don't want to license every user for calling. You want to leverage, you have 100 users and you want to only allow 10 calls at a time, some session-based calling. You can consume it that way. There's still some requirements from our side, whether you have phone system license or you bump up to A5, which includes it, but you have flexibility in how you can consume the system. On the right there, you can see some of the partners that we use for Operator Connect, but I also want to kind of take you into this and another feature that's coming up by going into my actual tenant. So here I'm in my Teams admin center, and let me know if you guys can't see it. I assume you can see it. But in the Teams admin center under Operator Connect, I can actually go in there, and I've already pre-populated it by just picking the United States. And I can come in here and I can see what features I want to actually select. And then I can go in and actually consume it right from within the Teams admin center. So if you see a partner on here already that you're used to working with, whether it's, in full disclosure, I came from NTT, but I've seen New Wave. They have their own platform, very strong story behind that. And if you want information, you can click Offer Details and actually take you right to their site and see the pricing options and what's available to you. So from architecture standpoint, multiple steps here. We have our endpoints, our devices. You see the variety. They can be phones, they can be headsets, they can be displays, they can be a puck that you put in a conference room that can attribute who's talking if you set it up correctly. It can be our partner integrators on the right rail there, whether it's a system integrator or if you use a partnership with one of our telco partners, or you do some integration with the API because you have something that's unique and custom that you require. You have a lot of flexibility, and all you need to add is our direct routing or our calling plan. Direct routing, if you have a pretty complicated dial plan already on your on-prem system, and you want to do some of the call forking, or you have a really robust contact center or a lot of analog connectivity, direct routing is usually the route to go. It's like you bring your own carrier and your own infrastructure, and you just pair it with Teams, calling Teams from a standpoint of calling. Now you can do some type of mix and matching with a calling plan and a direct routing scenario, but there's limitations to that, and that's when you want to leverage, my team or a partner to kind of lead you on that journey towards a calling scenario as far as your dial plan. In this case, you have a session border controller, which is like your voice gateway router. That's going to handle a lot of the heavy lifting from a dial plan standpoint. When a number is dialed, where does it go, et cetera. When you have a direct routing scenario, you want to make sure you're thinking of things like how emergency 911 is handled. Make sure you're compliant for Kerry's Law and the Rainbows Act, which I'll touch on later. With Operator Connect, again, it's like a third-party calling plan, but you're able to consume it from within the Teams admin center. And it's the right solution for you if, one Microsoft calling plan isn't available in your area, which if you're in the US, I assume you all are, it is. If your preferred operator is a participant in this program, they're a good option for you. If you want to find a new operator, and operator just means the carrier, the circuit that you're consuming. But where I find it also plays as a good story is the support mechanism behind it. That one throat to choke or that one back to pat. You're not calling Microsoft if there's an issue. You're calling the operator, and they have a direct peering agreement with us. And if they need to triage your trouble ticket and troubleshoot it and work with us on the back end, you're not impacted. You're able to keep going along with your business. And there's calling plan. But first, this just touches on a lot of the features that are available and more in our ability to scale and simplify IT. But to touch on calling plan, I just want to touch on a few things. One, it's quick and easy to get up and running with calling plan. We even offer trials, which I'll walk you through in a moment. Number porting we offer. We have dynamic emergency calling baked in, making you fully compliant with Kerry's Law and the Rainbows Act, which went in effect this year. And the ability to mix and match whether you have local, long distance, international calling. And you can also add communication credits for scenarios like if you don't have the right policies or roles for a user and they want to call international, you can kind of draw down those communications credits, or you have a toll-free number inbound that you want to pay for, you can use communications credits for there as well. Considerations with the calling plan, I spoke about emergency calling. For those of you who don't know, Kerry's Law, tragic story where Kerry was killed, and when her children tried to call 911, they weren't able to because they did not know the hotel they were at required you to dial 9 to get an outside line. In my previous life doing system integration, when I would set up a system, oftentimes this would come up, because if you have 9 and you want to dial a long distance number, you would dial 9-1. And if your users had heavy fingers or they weren't used to the new phone they're getting, they dial 9, they hold that 1 a little too long, a 911 call is placed, and that gets costly, accidentally calling. So companies would get creative. They might say, let's make 8 the leading digit before you dial 911. But what Kerry's Law says, you have to at least support 911 dialed as a traditional 911 call. And you have to be able to provide a notification that the 911 call has been made, a valid callback number, and information about the caller's location. Similarly with Raybound, you got to be able to show a dispatchable location with the street address, the room or floor of the caller. And with our calling plan, Teams has all that. Now we also have direct routing. We can partner with many of our emergency partners to make sure you also have that system, but that's another consideration to keep in mind when doing calling plan or direct routing. Operator Connect would bring their own version of it as well. Now, this is just an example of what you would see from a notification standpoint. You see just within the Teams system, you can see those notifications can go out. And you can actually assign it to a notification group. Best practice also is to let your lobby know, if emergency personnel is coming. I've seen people do that with syslog, or also include them in a notification group so they know that someone is actually coming because 911 was called. Now, we came out with this new feature in December for home use or remote locations, and this is rolling out right now. So you'd be able to actually give your users the ability to get their location when they log in, but also self-attest on where they're at and confirm. Part of this is giving you the ability to say, yes, I'm allowing my location to be tracked. If I'm going to the coffee shop, or I'm at home, or I travel across the country somewhere else. Well, now when I call 911, we want to make sure that I'm not disrupting my own safety by not having the proper location. So this is an important feature to enable. We just released it this December, and again, it's rolling out to tenants. We talked about endpoints. We have a variety of endpoints, from low cost to high cost, fancy to traditional looking phones, to newer displays that don't even have a handset. We have video phones, we have traditional audio phones, we have common area phone options. Common area phones licensed a little differently. It's not licensed per user, it will be licensed per phone, with the exception of some of the features it can do. Like you say, well, why don't I just make everything a common phone? Well, you can't add it to a call queue as of now. We plan to introduce that feature later this year, but you also can't have voicemail on that phone. So that's some reasons why you would not have a common area phone for users. But it is a great solution for, if you have substitutes coming into a classroom or any other common areas where a phone needs to be, because you would just have a user account for that. We talked about low-cost phones starting at $120 from Audio Codes and Yealink, and also our SIP gateway option. Our SIP gateway option allows you to kind of bleed your assets if you have a supported phone. Now, what's a supported phone? Well, it depends. What I've seen consistently is if you have phones, that you bought within 2015 to now, and they have some capability of registering to a cloud service, they're generally supported. But we do offer documentation on those supported phones so you know what's available to you from a SIP gateway standpoint. Now, from a feature standpoint, as you can see, you can make inbound, outbound calls. You have hold, resume, some of those secondary features. You have call transfer. You can do meeting dial in, dial out. You can do not disturb. It's going to be different than our presence do not disturb. That's within Teams, but you can have a do not disturb button so calls will come in and not ring and go right to voicemail. And you have static emergency calling. So unfortunately, we can't offer dynamic emergency calling, but we can offer static emergency calling from an admin standpoint, setting up those locations and then that security desk notification. Now, hot desking, also something interesting that people are starting to roll out and use. The ability to reserve or book a device. Our new normal, we all maybe not have desks at our office anymore, but maybe we're sharing a phone. But the ability to reserve that phone and even extend that reservation or device is a cool new feature that we are rolling out. And like I mentioned earlier, maybe you don't want to buy devices, you want to leverage device as a service. We have programs for that so that you can make your own flexible recurring payments and you have access to the full device portfolio, keeping you up to date without having to continue to buy. We do that with our cell phones now. Maybe we don't want to spend all the money on the device. We just want to pay a little bit more per month for those devices. And if you have old devices and you want to trade them in, we do have a device trade-in program so that you can leverage getting some money back to purchase that new system if you're interested in that as well. These are trusted partners that we stand behind and back, just like our device as a service program. So with that, I want to get started with Microsoft Teams calling. But I did want to pause, though, and see if there were any questions so far before I got into the next part.
we had one question. It looks like it was actually two questions. It looks like it was already answered. And then there was one about going into more details about analog solutions.
Sure. So analog in general is going to plug into a session border controller. But there are solutions that are team certified devices that will be like analog over IP. So if you have like a paging or maybe some announcement speaker system or any device like that, we'll generally bring a partner in and they will make a team certified device for that. But at a high level, analog will go into a session border control. Now, I mentioned that SIP gateway feature. We are supporting analog terminal adapters. I've not seen if they support the larger analog terminal adapters. They have like 24 ports. I'm expecting it to be just a 1 to 2 port, 1-to-1 ratio. So hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right. So getting started with Teams calling. I'm going to take you through how we can set up a voice trial using Teams calling plan. And we do that from the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, essentially. So there's three things that to start a trial. And is one, you either get the E5 licensing. We don't do A5 for trials, or we do a phone system bundle if that's available at the time. And then there's virtual users we set up. Virtual users are free, but it's important you have to go through the purchasing motion, even though there's no cost to them. And the virtual user is used for things like auto-attendants and call queues. You can assign phone numbers to them. So any entity that's not a user but requires a phone number, you want to leverage a virtual user for that. And we want to add the calling plan. And so right now we can get like a 25 user calling plan and it will give it to you for 30 days. After 30 days, if you're, have the momentum and you're moving towards actually developing a system, you reach out to someone like myself, I'll extend it, but there always has to be a reason behind it. Sometimes it might be it took you 30 days to get everything else finished to actually plan to do it. And we understand that, and we're definitely flexible there. But it's not something we can just let sit on a shelf for 6 months without any movement, so to speak. So I'm going to go into my tenant first and show you how we license it that way. So first, this is something I already had done, so I'll leave it here. It's an add-on, and it shows you let me zoom in, the virtual user. All right. So you see, this is what I was talking about for the call queues and auto-attendant. And you click details. And I would recommend getting, at least 5 if you're starting. And then you would click buy, and you see it's a 0 cost item. I won't go through all the steps because the next step would ask for some type of purchasing mechanism or credit card number, so to speak. But that's what you would do to get a virtual user. And feel free to screenshot that, but that's essentially what you want to add is that piece right there for the virtual user. For the other pieces, we go to add-ons, and if we say, make sure I have all of them showing. Make sure it's showing all the options. Clear that. There, see all add-ons. All right. All right, so do a search for business voice, and you see there's this promo here that you may be able to take advantage of. But since this is a trial, what I do is I go to Microsoft 365 Business Voice here, and you click there, and you see you have the option to start a free trial. When you start a free trial, it will, I've already done a trial on this, so it won't let me do it. But when you click start a free trial, it will first make sure you're not a robot if you haven't already clicked that box. And then it will give you access to 25 calling plan users licenses. All right. And then the final step is making sure you have, if you have A5 already, then you don't need to do this. But say you have A3, what we do is we can give you E5, which is the same as A5, but it's for commercial and business. So do the same thing, go into Microsoft 365 and see all the options. And if I just do a search for Microsoft 365 E5, then you see the options. And I did the same thing here. Click details and then click start free trial. And if I do start free trial, it will also give me the ability to have 25 users for E5. So that's how you get started. It'll ask you to prove you're not a robot via text and a code. Oh, sorry, I've been doing this multiple times today, so it's probably gonna wait a cloud minute before it lets me do it again. But the next step after that, once you put in your phone number, is it will text you that code that you put in, and it'll take you right to the final screen. You'll get an email confirming that you have those licenses, and then you're ready to assign those licenses. Now, I want to go back to my presentation and show a couple of things that you need to be aware of. For one, we have multiple roles when it comes to administrating. So here it's going to kind of walk you through those roles and how to get them. Now, global admin works, of course, but with Teams, we have 4 other options. We have Teams Administrator, Teams Communications Administrator, Teams Support Engineer, and Teams Communication Support Specialist. So I just wanted to highlight that for you so you're aware of the differences. The Teams Admin is full access to the Teams Administrative Center, manage service requests, manage 365 groups, monitor service health, etc. And you can see it by clicking the little eye next to the actual title of that role. The Teams Communication Admin lets you assign numbers, manage voice policies, read call and analytics. The Team Support Engineer lets you read call detail records for all users, and that's good if you need someone that want to troubleshoot multiple people. And then if you have someone that you just want to give the role to troubleshoot specific users one at a time, then you will go with a team support specialist who can also read call detail records, but can only look at troubleshooting for specific users at a time. All right, we went into I showed you how to start the trial. Once you get the trial set up, then you're going to now move into the Teams Administrative Center after you've licensed all your users. So you license the user, you license them for the calling plan and the E5, and then any role you want to give them. And now you're able to go into Teams Admin Center and actually assign those numbers and actually get those numbers and then assign those numbers. So I'll take you through how we do that. So logging into the Teams Admin Center, you can do it right from the M365 Admin Center, or you can go directly to that URL, admin.teams.microsoft.com. And I want to show the different types of phone numbers before I then take you back into my tenant. So once we acquire the phone numbers, you see we have multiple types. We have the user number, which is the main number you would assign to your users. But if you want to do a call queue, if you want to do an auto-attendant, you also have those options there to give service numbers. And that's where those virtual users come into play. Now, this is going to walk you through how we acquire those numbers Okay, so we would click add, you would pick your region, United States, and then you pick this number type, mainly user, and then you pick a location. And if you're doing a trial, I just want to forewarn you, if you're picking a major city, major metropolitan area, you're not going to find a lot of numbers available. But if you pick one of the outlying area codes, you'll have more success if you're trying to find groups of numbers. We also show porting. We allow porting, which I'll go through in a moment. But you give it a name of your order, you pick how many numbers you're getting, and then you hit next. And you're going to finish when you hit place order. So you wait a cloud minute, which could be a few seconds to a few minutes to a few hours, but in this case, it's one of the smaller cloud minutes. Tells you your numbers you're getting, and then you click place order. So that's how you acquire the telephone numbers. Now, as a step, then once you get ready to assign the numbers, you want to create emergency addresses. So here you would name some of the addresses, and then when you go to assign the telephone number, it'll actually ask you for the emergency address. So this is a step that you need to do before you start assigning telephone numbers. So all this is all within the location setting. It's good to make sure you get a latitude and longitude, or use the search tool, the Bing search maps tool. That way it can actually confirm the address. You can do some of this with PowerShell, but I don't think PowerShell is actually validating it. It will say validated, but it's not validating it with the latitude, longitude. So there's an extra step you want to make sure you include if you are using PowerShell to do this piece. And then assigning the numbers, you assign the number to your users within the Teams admin center. And as you see here, the screenshot shows you service, or users. That kind of tells you whether it's assigned or not and what it's entitled for. So in order to assign the numbers, go to the voice rail, go to phone numbers, and you click the number that's unassigned. And you can add that to the user. I mentioned porting. We also allow porting of numbers. I recommend, if you're testing out Teams calling, utilize our calling plan and test it out. Get familiar with the interface and some of the configuration. But then when you're ready to go from a porting standpoint, plan that in a window of time where you're able to make that change. And we allow you to roll back, but just from my experience as a system integrator, porting is a sensitive thing to do. You want to make sure the stars are aligned and everything is right before you just go ahead and port numbers over. You can port from your current provider right to Microsoft, so that let you keep your existing telephone number, and you can port from most supported providers, whether landlines, mobile numbers, toll-free numbers, or service numbers. And when you go through the port, one of the things you would tie is you would get a PIN. That PIN lets you do a reversal. If you want a letter of agency, and again, I want you to notice you're able to do all this right within the Teams admin center, from the porting to the assigning to the acquiring of numbers. But similar to the other steps, you're actually going to log in, create a name of what the order is, an email for notification, and you can schedule that date you want to do the port. And then we're granular enough to let you select whether you want to port all your numbers or not. You can even use a CSV file if you want, and upload a CSV file with those numbers. So you add your address information, and then you follow through with the menued steps. And all this is documented in our Microsoft Docs, or just from within the Teams Admin Center. If you click any of the help files, it will lead you right to the document that's appropriate for what it is that you're doing. So after doing this step, well, not the porting step, but after acquiring numbers and assigning numbers, you're at a point where you're already able to make and receive phone calls. But what I noticed, that's not enough. You may want to do more with Teams calling. So this next section, I want to go into what other things you can do once you get it all set up. Specifically around things like abbreviated dial plans. If you have an extension-based dial plan, how would you make that extension map to your DID? That's a question that comes up a lot. So I want to just showcase that quickly. Dial plan gives you option to do normalization rules. So if you don't know what that is, it's basically digit manipulation. A lot of if and statements. If I dial this number, it does this. So in this case, I'm going to take you into my tenant again and just show you some of the things you can do with the dial plan. So this is demonstrating a 4-digit dial plan, how to make it expand to actual full E164 number, which is that +1 area code in the full number. So I actually set up a few things in my tenant. Let me go ahead and showcase that rather than letting you watch this video. So here under voice, the voice rail, all the things are moved under the voice rail. I go to dial plan and I have my global policy there for dialing. I'm gonna go ahead and edit that one, so I don't want to create a new policy. And then under here, you see normalization rules. So I've already created one that just forwards to my mobile, but let's say I wanted to actually do some 4-digit dialing. So I'll call this one 4-digit. I'll say 4-digit dialing expansion. My plan, the numbers, I think the extensions, I'll say the extension starts with 2. I'm going to say that I'm going to use a 4-digit extension that starts with 2. And then when I dial 2, I'm going to tell it to actually add some numbers. So first, let me check my users. So I have 2 users here, Adele and Lee. And Adele's number, as you see, is 619-633-2694. So I want to actually add this right here, this piece right here in front of that number. All right. So the number starts with 2, and I'll say if it's 4 digits, then add this. And if I want to test it, I can say 2694, test it, and it'll show me the result. It tells me it's translating it the way I want it. Save that. I can actually number these policies, save that here. And now when I go over to my users, and I say I want to dial from Lee to Adele, and I say I want to dial 2694. See, it's actually calling Lee. So you see, just simply like that, you can mimic your dial plan as complicated as you want it to be. You may have, and you can do this with calling external numbers as well, that are outside your system if you want to have shortcut calling with abbreviated dialing. So that's under dial plan. I wanted to just showcase that. How are we doing on time? All right. Next, I want to talk about, we talk about contact center or customer care, the ability to have front end IVR, Auto-Attendant, these things, back in the day, we would have that one person who's the voice of the company, and they would record all the greetings, press 1 for this, press 2 for that, or we'd send out and pay somebody to record these and we'd upload them. Well, Teams has a really robust way of doing that. And you do that using our call queues and auto attendants. A call queue would be create a group of people that need to receive calls. I've seen people use it with student agents. They need a number where people would just call a pilot number, and then it could route between who's available from an agent standpoint, or any type of help desk scenario. You can make a call queue a number that people can call from the outside, but I generally have always said you always like to put it under auto attendant. Now this is where the resource account comes in from earlier. So you see right here, in order, we would get that resource account, we would license it with that virtual user, and then we would assign that number or call queue to build it. But this is that prerequisite, is making sure you have that virtual user so that you can actually configure a call queue or an auto attendant. And this next slide will kind of walk you through, just how you do those steps with the resource account. So we always identify what it is we're doing. I like to use a name, some type of naming convention that lets you know what it is. Because as this thing scales out, you want to look at it later and go, well, what was that user ID? So if it's a auto attendant, maybe you put AA in it. If it's a call queue, you put CQ in it. But it's good to plan that up front, how you want to actually name these. And you see it creates a user actually right within your admin center that you can leverage and license with that virtual user license. And again, those are zero cost licenses, the virtual users. So I always recommend getting at least 5 if you're doing a trial. You can assign a number to the call queue or the auto attendant. If you are gonna tier the call queue under the auto attendant, then I don't see a reason to have that call queue have a number unless you want people to have a direct route to that call queue. But generally, if you're gonna put it in behind a menu where you hit 1 to get to agents or sales or customer service, then you would just associate the calling plan to the auto attendant and not the call queue. So hopefully that makes sense. But you only need to assign the calling plan to devices that need to be able to make and receive PSTN calling. Your auto attendant, you may want to actually make outbound calls, or have some type of function to an outbound service desk, after hours, and you can do that all just baked into the Teams without any additional integrations. So once you create that auto attendant user, you see you can assign it a number, and then even our menu system is very robust from what you can add to auto attendant. So the next couple of slides will actually go through what those steps are. The call queue here, leveraging under auto attendant. I won't stay on this slide because I think we just showed that, but I do want to specify on the auto attendant the ability to create a greeting just by simply typing it. One of my challenges when I was doing system integration was finding that voice and sitting in a room and they record the greeting, and sometimes it might take 20 takes to get that right recording, and if you had to add Spanish, for an option, now it's another person unless that person was bilingual. Here we let you actually type in what you want to say, and you can upload WAV files if you want to use those, but you can also just type in simply what you want to say, and the engine's powerful enough to just pronounce those words and give those options out. You have holiday setups as well, after hours options, all baked right in to the same auto attendant as options. So this will step you through the first step of building an auto attendant. We always have to give it a name and then pick who the operator is going to be. That's the person who, if they zero out, where does it go? So it might be a receptionist, it might be someone from the IT team, but that point of no return, if they get stuck, that needs to be somebody in your organization to answer those calls. Step 2, you want to give options for a greeting. Again, like I said, you can type in what you want to call, say what you want to do after you route the call. I recommend not disconnecting, always giving the caller a chance to get back into the menu system. It's not dropping. The user experience isn't good if you drop them, even if it's after hours. So in this case, they're pointing into a sales queue with option 1. But that's business hours. You want to also have your holiday and your after hours options as well. So being able to go in and set up what happens on certain days, all built into the system. Now I've seen, how other competitors do it. It might be multiple servers or applications that you have to configure for these steps. But here with Teams calling, you can do it all from within that same single pane of glass. So now these were system level things that I would go into a POC or a pilot. I would always suggest you set up at least one auto attendant, one call queue, just so you can get used to the experience if you need those features later. We also have voice enabled channels, which is similar to a call queue, actually follows the same steps. And we give you the ability from an end user standpoint to go in and make yourself available or unavailable. But there's other options as well as far as policy-driven things like call park policy, and to be able to pick up calls that have been parked. So these are all legacy functions that people will say, hey, we want to buy this new system, but we want to do all these things that we used to do. So that's why we offer these features and functionality. So setting up call park, giving the ability to put someone on hold. And as I mentioned earlier, we offer hold music and customize hold music. That's a new feature that we're rolling out, the ability to actually control the music that's playing. Right now, it's a default music, the mic that we've selected, but to be able to say, maybe you want some message to play, or an ad to play, or you want to give an announcement for your educational institution. You can do that when people are on hold, waiting for a queue, or while they're on hold waiting to get picked up in a call park scenario. So in this case, they chose 1-1 as the call park option once you allow it. But then you can see what the user experience is to be able to retrieve that call. And it's simply picking up your handset and down in digits to actually pick up that call that's been parked. So looking at time, I know we're at 11. I don't want to continue going through all the slides if we have any questions. So I want to pause here and see if there's any Q&A we can do. Well,
Hey,
here.
Andre, we do have a couple questions.
Okay.
First question is going to be around licensing. So they want to know if they need to have A5 or E5 license for all users making calls.
So yeah, so if they need to make and receive calls, then and you're using a calling plan, then yes, for education it will be A5.
Okay, perfect. And then second part to that
Oh,
question
let
is
me add to that as well. If you
sorry.
have A3, you can add the phone system license to it. So it doesn't have to be A5 if you're not going to use the other features, but you can actually add that step up using the phone system license.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. Second part to that question is, how is this licensing handled for shared handsets in public locations that are not assigned to a user?
Yep, great question. So common area phones are not per user licenses. They're actually their own device license. Just remember, the common area phone can't have voicemail on it. It can't do some of the other functionality like call queues. We're planning to roll that feature out for April timeframe, but don't hold me to that yet until we get confirmation and announce it. But the common area phone license or any shared space That's how you would license it. It would be a per device license, and you would you kind of create it similar to the way you would create a regular phone in your system, where you would have an end user assigned to a phone, except you would create a user that you would, for that common area phone, it would be some generic user account, and that's what you associate the license to, and that's the license that would go on that phone.
All right, perfect. Another question that just came in. How can we set up a consult with someone like Andre to explain our specific needs and get recommendations on our options? Can OETC help set this meeting like this? So this could be a two-part question from OETC and you, Andre.
Yep, definitely. My role is to essentially do that, to meet you with our customers and help them through this journey in removing technical blockers. So I'm available through your account rep, and we'll set that call up. Usually 30 minutes to an hour is usually what we start with. And then as you're going down the journey, you might have questions deeper about auto attendance or call troubleshooting. I handle all those questions and calls.
Excellent. I just posted in the chat. If anyone has any questions, you can either type it in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand and ask over the mic, you're more than welcome. This time is for you guys. The session was really great. Thank you so much, Andre. And thank you everyone who helped ask.
If there's no other questions, I do have other content, so I'll jump to something else I want to show. This is the survivable branch appliance. So this is what to do when there's an outage. We have this feature now, and it's a virtual machine that would run on your session border controller, and it allows you to make and receive calls if there is an outage to the Microsoft 365 network. We do advertise we're 4 nines available, but if on that time that we are out, you're still not down. So that's one piece. And then also spam notification is a feature we're rolling out. So you can see we're telling you through our own algorithms whether this is a likely spam call. And if you're familiar with the shaken and stir framework, we are working on supporting that as well. But here you can see just within your call logs that a call was considered spam. So just like what you see with your mobile phone allows you to do, we're definitely helping to support and protect you from any bad actors. Now, going back to the discussion about cost and ROI, that comes up a lot. Another thing that I do offer is the ability to kind of come in and help you make this justification. So we have our own calling calculator that we can run with you if you're willing to be transparent and kind of pull back the curtain, show us what you're paying for certain things. We can give you a kick-out report, kind of show you how long will it take to get your investment back and make it sure that it's actually the right solution for you and help save costs in the long run. So any questions on that? We'll do a time check. All right, we're just at over the top of the hour. I have content on just basic calling scenarios, but I'll hold that, because I don't want to, exhaust you with PowerPoint, or what they say, death by slides. But I thank you all for coming, and I'm available to just stand online. And if you want to come off mute and ask any questions, I'm available.
Yeah, so far, all the questions have been answered in the chat. Thank you again, everybody, for asking and participating. I went ahead and added my email, so if anyone would like to set up a meeting with Andre, follow up, I can help coordinate that. Awesome. And just work on next steps. But thank you again, everyone, for being here today. Thank you, Andre. The content was excellent. Yep, great session. And just a reminder, this will be recorded and posted on OETC website. So looking forward to hearing from everyone and seeing how we can help with next steps.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.